washing as many clothes as he possibly could have.
I will give him that.
And said, like, listen, I have my repeat customers. I'm making a fine living. And also I'm terrified and paranoid and whatever. Yeah. So I am just only going to let people that I recognize in, and that's that.
Maybe.
Okay. That's certainly possible.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, or it is possible that something happened within the past year to cause this change of behavior. There was nobody, as far as they knew, reported that he had been robbed or assaulted.
But he would have to have reported that.
But yeah, it's true.
To somebody.
Yeah, he didn't say anything to anybody about that, though. But who knows? Maybe somebody was out to get him. I mean, maybe like I said, maybe he did actually find a Maltese falcon in a flea market or something like that, and he had it, and he was really paranoid about it.
He could.
Or maybe he found the gas-operated iron that Devin just found on the internet and waved at us that actually exists. And he was like, "The future is coming for me."
The gas iron.
I mean, he could have also it happens plenty that he could have had a mental health breakdown.
There's also that.
He could have already been a little paranoid, and that he just had some sort of a breakdown that was maybe triggered by something, but also maybe triggered by nothing. And that he just suddenly became a very paranoid human being because his mental health had deteriorated to a certain extent.
That's possible.
Which happens.
A
lot, actually,
it does
unfortunately.
Happen. And so it could have been that. It could have been that it really was. Maybe he heard about some robberies, and that sort of scared him. Or maybe there were neighborhood mobsters that were offering him protection, and he wasn't paying them money for protection,
And they don't like it when you don't accept their protection.
No, they don't.
Maybe
really
he had his first run-in with an insurance salesman. Boy, sure is a nice laundromat you've got here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
Could you imagine if this burned down?
With that gas power.
All the way. With you in it. And no financial compensation.
Why would I want it if I'm dead? Never mind, just pay it.
You would, wouldn't you?
That's the way it worked in those days, and probably still does in many parts of the world. Yeah.
That's how AAA has been around this long.
Yeah.
But the whole big trick with this thing, right, is that, like, yes, it would be cool to know who did it and why.
Yeah.
But the how is bigger, right?
Yeah, how did he do?
Yeah, that's actually the larger question.
That's
really nobody really cares about.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah,
certainly. Nobody cares about who killed him.
They want to know about how the killer did it.
Yeah,
I know. Which is what I want to know too. Like I said, total locked door mystery.
Which was the thing we had talked about with the Wallace.
The Julie Wallace thing,
was they were like, well, we're pretty sure that she did it, and we don't really care about why or if she actually did. We just care that she tells us how.
Well, there was the same thing with what Joe said, Hugues de la Plaza. Because they were like, oh, no, he did. It's fine. Whatever.
Suicide.
Everyone was like, we don't really care why.
Yeah.
Just how.
Yeah.
How?
So help us understand some of the scenario that they find, Joe.
So, let's see what we got here. We got the doors and windows secured from the inside.
Yep.
The windows, of course, with nails. The doors were bolted, which, as we mentioned, could be a steel bar, just a slide into position kind of bolt with no key.
It could also be a deadbolt with a key.
Yeah, deadbolt, or not even not a key operated one. Well, just a little handle on the inside. Or you could have had a regular old door lock, and you guys have probably all seen these. I've got them in my house. They're the kind that have the plate with, at the top there's a knob, and then below that there's a keyhole that's shaped like a keyhole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's called keyhole.
Exactly. And you stick your old-fashioned key in there to lock or unlock it. And to lock it, you close the door at night, and you stick your key in there, turn it 360 degrees.
You're talking skeleton key, by the way.
Skeleton key, yeah. Turn it 360 degrees, and then pull it back out, and your door is locked. He's throwing the deadbolt, right? But a lot of people in those days would leave the key in because the keyhole goes all the way through, so people can peek through it.
And some plates would have a swing plate that would cover the keyhole for privacy, but that was an additional cost, so very few had that.
And another thing too is that those old-fashioned locks actually were not that incredibly hard to pick. So that's another reason.
There's a reason that a skeleton key is called skeleton key, and it's that many of the keys worked.
Yeah, exactly.
You can kind of buy
a generic key.
And it probably kind of works for most. I mean, they like 3 tumblers or something. It was super easy.
Yeah, they were easy to pick, and so the idea.
For those of you wondering, I'm sorry, just to interrupt. For those of you wondering, Joe has other locks on his door now.
Oh yeah,
you can't just break into his house.
No, you can't. Those are just internal locks, but the not the exterior ones. But so when you want to lock up at night, in this case, what you do is you turn it 360 degrees. But instead of pulling it out, you turn it about another 90 degrees.
90 or 180, one of the two.
Yeah, right in there, and just leave the key in.
So it locks it in place. Yeah. The teeth are now barred.
Somebody can't just push it out from the other side.
Right, there's a mechanism which stops them from just being pushed out.
Yeah, and so it was very common. I think probably more often than not, people did this. They left the key in the lock.
Yeah.
And so.
Also helps, you not forget your key when you leave.
Yeah, that's another good point. And
it's very hard to leave the house if the door is locked with the key
in it.
Yeah, and you have to have it in your hand as you walk out.
Yeah, and I think this is probably what happened because I in one account that I did read that the door had been locked and the key had been left in the lock on the inside. But again, I'm not 100% sure.
There's so many accountings though in this story; it's difficult to say.
I know, but.
You did say that there were extra bolts on the door.
I believe there was at least one extra bolt on each door. Yeah. But then
whether that was the true slide or a bar drop-in U-shaped blocks for a bolt, like you see the old castle door blocks.
Yeah.
A bolt could be a lot of things in the reporting.
Yeah, and so I don't think it was anything quite that elaborate, although it could have been.
Well, that's not very elaborate. That's a really simple system.
It's pretty simple, yeah. It's a good point.
It's simple, but there have been... I mean, you can look up on YouTube even. There are ways to pick those skeleton key locks with the keys in them.
Oh, yeah.
Or to relock the door from the exterior.
Yes.
Yeah.
Harder to do with a slide bolt.
Well,
so that's why I'm just
the drop-in bar system.
Right, and so that's why I'm just bringing that up is that it was a slide bolt that probably had to be locked from the inside.
It probably was, and the reason I would say that is because the police spent a lot of time thinking about this, so they probably would have thought of just all the permutations about this. The police, like I said, they investigated this and went over it very thoroughly, and the best they could come up with is that the murderer was somebody very small, thin, and very agile, who shot Fink and somehow crawled out through the transom window, and their support for that was that one of the hinges on the transom was broken. So maybe somebody forced his way through that window.
But it also sounds like he didn't live in the most well-maintained space.
Yeah, and that's true too, or it could be too. Let's not forget the policeman did boost a kid up and shove him through the transom window.
Right. So but worth mentioning that, and we don't know what the kid did, as soon as they dropped in, but
could have run around, picked up all the gold coins he found on the ground, and then unlocked
or
the
if
door.
there was a chair or something, but you would need some kind of boosting mechanism.
To climb out
to get,
Yeah, you would.
That would have probably still been sitting there.
Yeah, it would be.
Well, it's convenient. There's a chair right in here. I'll just jump onto that.
Yeah.
Kids are dumb.
Yeah.
You drop onto the chair and then scoot it out of the way to open the door.
12-year-old kid, they don't know what to look for or what to think about recording in their memory. Totally.
I don't even know if this kid was 12. 12 years old might have been too big to fit through this transom window. There was some suggestion that maybe the killer fired through the transom window itself. So he gets out, the killer sneaks up in Fink's apartment, bringing a chair with him or something like that.
Or a ladder.
Or a ladder or something, or a crate. Sets it down, stands on top.
The great ladder killer of 1929.
Yeah. And then shoots down through the transom and kills Fink. There was a problem with that, and the coroner said that the angle of the bullet wounds, it appeared that the killer was standing face to face and at the same level.
And there were the burns.
And there are also powder burns on his hand also. So that kind of shot the hell out of that. And
no pun intended.
Yeah, the windows were intact, so he hadn't been shot from outside through a window either. And of course, there again, the whole powder burn on the hand thing kind of rules that out too. But another question is that somebody somehow shot him and got out of the room, leaving it locked from the inside. But the other question I have is that why? Why do you do that?
Not why do you kill him, but why?
Yeah, why go to the
mystery?
trouble of, unless you're maybe some sort of true crime mystery aficionado.
It was you.
Yeah, it could have been, or it was you.
You're old enough.
Yeah. No, I'm not old enough.
He just mouthed the word that we can't use.
Bleep out.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, the only reason I can think of is that, other than being a true crime aficionado, is that maybe the idea was to get the cops so puzzled over that they'd be puzzling over that part of the mystery and forget to go out and look for who.
Well, that seemed to have worked, right?
Apparently, I think they did look for his killer. They at least talked to enough neighbors and acquaintances and stuff to try to figure out, the usual way you solve murder is who wanted to kill this guy? That's your murderer probably. And they did that. They did their due diligence. I guess another reason I can think of is that, like, well, you could always say to the jury, it's like, do I look like Houdini? Do I look like I could have fit through that transom window to you? You know, and maybe, you know, if you get caught.
I'm a 200-pound dude. There's no way I could have done that.
Yeah, so there are some theories out there. Believe me, kind of a lot of theories, actually. And so we're going to talk about that. But first, let's take a break.
Hey, guys. For those of you who know Joe well, and that's most of you, you know there's only one thing that Joe hates more than shopping, and that's shopping for cleaning products. I mean, let me tell you, Joe does not like spending time in the store or waiting in line or figuring out if he got the best deal, but he does care about what's being used in his house, because the cats, which is why he joined Grove Collaborative. Grove sells only the best non-toxic products and ships them right to his door when he wants them. He actually got his first box from them last month, and it could not have been easier. Actually, I also got one, and I thought I'd just pick up some natural cleaner to replace my Windex and ended up with these amazingly cool wool dryer balls, and damn, my clothes smell really good, and they're super static free. I mean, listen to me, I'm talking about dryer balls when I should be talking about Joe's dryer balls. If you haven't already tried Grove, you really should. And all of our listeners who sign up get an amazing $30 Mrs. Meyer's gift set and a free 30-day VIP membership and a bonus gift just for you when you sign up and place an order of $20 or more. Check out Grove and the Thinking Sideways special offer at grove.co, that's not com, .co/sideways. That's grove.co, not .com/sideways.
And we're back. All right, so our first theory, this is actually, I found this at least one place on the interwebs, which is that this was not actually a big mystery at all. It was just basically kind of an urban legend / built from, misreporting by the media or police incompetence.
Yeah.
So it's a sloppy story turned into a legend.
Yeah, and so there was one commenter I saw, I think it was on Reddit, that said that the killer probably just had a copy of the key, so he just, killed him and locked the door from the outside when he left, which would be pretty easy.
If the key was not actually in the door, I can't disagree with that.
Yeah, and so that makes sense, except that kind of assumes that the police were morons. I mean, right?
Well,
true.
I mean, a little bit, but again, we are admitting one thing here.
Omitting?
No, we're admitting one thing here, and that is that a small child was sent through into the crime scene before anyone else, right?
Yeah.
So they had to take on faith that that small child said, the door was bolted.
Yeah.
And the key was in the lock. I mean, you could see the key was in the lock, or it wasn't, and whatever. But, maybe it was locked, and you could actually see through to the crime scene, but they assumed there was these extra bolts that were bolted, and the kid said, "Yeah, it was bolted. Of course it was."
Well, yeah, but in those days, I don't think the kid. I think the kid would just turned the key and unlocked it and left the key in there. I don't see why he would have removed it and then lied about there being a key in there.
No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, it's curiosity killed the cat. Literally, the kid could have got in and stood there and pulled the key out and looked around for a minute, and then somebody bangs on the door, "Hey kid, what's going on? Open up the door!"
Yeah.
And then went, "Oh, oops!"
Right.
Opens it up and sorry.
Yeah.
And if the key is the whole thing, I mean, I'm just saying.
The key is literally the key to the story.
Right.
It had to be there for the kid to turn it and unlock it.
Yes. Yeah. Or things had to be bolted on the other side, or whatever. But if there was a little bit of misreporting on his end, where he was like, they opened the door and saw all the bolts and said, "Oh, these must have all been bolted," but they weren't, and it was just a key. And there are some other, as we're going to discuss in a minute, there are some other ways that you could have locked the door with the key
from the outside.
Blah blah. I mean,
I don't think so. I'm sure
I agree.
I'm sure they grilled the kid pretty well.
I'm really just playing devil's advocate here, but I will just say, it's long enough ago that there could be some room for something.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they went over it pretty carefully.
You would hope.
They did, because they spent some time on this one, actually. The police did. So I think it's probably a safe assumption that there really truly was some sort of a bolt that was thrown from the inside, or a key in the lock on the other side, or something that made them believe that. Although, like you said, the kid could have somehow said something, misreported it, but you would think that they would have sat him down and really straightened that, gotten that story straightened out. And
you would think, but again, we don't know how old the kid was.
Yeah.
And the younger the kid, oftentimes there's just some kind of, if a police officer says to them, and all the bolts were locked, right? And the kid would say, yes, sir.
And that is also the problem, is that this was an era where crime scene, as we've talked about before, crime scenes weren't protected. Police said whatever they wanted to the news agencies to get a buck.
Yeah.
And so they could have just started saying, it was so weird, it was completely locked. When in fact, it wasn't. And we're going to talk about this a bajillion times in this story, but there's a million scenarios where there's gradations of the truth that could have sent it off in another direction.
Maybe,
but I'm just saying all of this to just, again, be the devil's advocate. Yeah. I agree,
but
I think it's likely all of this was true. But
I think it is, because for one thing, I mean, there are lots of murders in New York City, and so why did they pick this particular one to say, oh, it was all locked from the inside? When they could have locked mysteries all over New York. There's probably all kinds of dead bodies found in apartments that are locked, so.
But it could have been a situation where, we see this today, where it is a, what is the term? It's a firework case. Is it Fink? He is an immigrant, and suddenly there's an immigrant push for, people who are like, we're immigrants, and we are not getting the protection we need and the service we deserve. We see this today, and what the hell? And suddenly he is just, it's that that gunpowder story. Yeah, the powder cake. Thank you. It's the powder cake story, and so it gets launched and then drops immediately after that. But all we're left with is those hot details, and that's it.
So you're saying that I'm trying to figure out your reasoning here. So he was a Polish immigrant. The Polish-American community got up in arms, and then so the police...
because the Irish-American cops didn't give a rip, and so it's inflammatory, it gets in the papers, but only certain details get saved through the generation.
Or the cops were trying to cover their butts, maybe didn't do as good a job. Again, this is total speculation.
I think you guys are thinking this over a little too hard.
I think we're thinking this through the current modern, unfortunate media lens.
Well, I think I agree. But again, I'm going to just reiterate again. I'm just kind of, I'm just saying it to voice it.
This is possible, but not likely.
Unlikely.
But,
Exactly.
I don't think that's what happened.
Yeah. But it is possible that it is vaguely possible that cops could have said, after the fact, well, here's all the reasons that we couldn't really figure out what was going on. It's just a locked door mystery. It's not a murder mystery. And old-timey.
Well, no,
but again,
and that's
highly unlikely.
It is highly unlikely because a lot of murders didn't get solved in those days, or these days either.
These days either. So that's why we have a show.
Yeah. And the police actually, considering the amount of trouble they went to in this particular. Just say, hey, did anybody ever ask that kid if maybe it wasn't really locked from the inside, and after they've torn the place apart, so that's one reason I think it probably did happen. But also
we've got a whole bunch of other theories, though.
Well, no, I wanted to say one other thing about this. Is that the New York police commissioner at the time, his name was Edward Mulrooney, who gave an interview on the radio. This is pre-TV. So he did a radio interview about 2 years after the murder and said that he talked about 3 cases, and this was one of them. He said he considered it insoluble and one of the greatest mysteries of his police career, of the NYPD. And since there's probably a lot of unsolved murders, I'm thinking that happened in New York when he was during his tenure. I'm thinking the part about it that was insoluble was the locked room aspect of the case.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking he probably had access to the files, the actual files, and not whatever was reported in the press, because that always gets distorted.
Totally.
And mistakes are always made.
Yeah.
So that's another reason I think this is really, truly an honest-to-God locked door mystery.
I totally agree.
Not just a screw-up. Yeah.
No, sorry. We do that thing sometimes where we just all we feel like we have to argue the counterpoint, but I totally agree.
I think it happened. Yeah. And so we got a mystery. Okay, our next theory is suicide. He actually did commit suicide. But, of course, there's a problem with that. No gun. The kid was alone in the room for a few moments. Maybe the gun was just laying there on the floor.
Guns are valuable.
And he pocketed it?
And the kid grabs the gun and sticks it in his pocket. You know, and so that's possible. Of course, you think the police would have grilled him pretty hard and then actually wrung the truth out of him because
unless he squirmed away in the press of people that were right there outside the door.
Oh, and just vanished and they never saw the kid again.
Yeah,
it's possible.
That happens.